Just ahead, there's another edition of the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks and of Tough TV. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm political analyst Al Spry. We're going to be talking about the Affordable Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare, one of our more interesting topics, with a gentleman, Don Kirkendall. He's an insurance guy.
Yes. For many, many years, he's very knowledgeable on this. It's a conversation that is worth very much hearing, especially when we are confronted with this disaster called Obamacare. There, I said it. Well, all right. Will hold me accountable. Stay put. The Florida Roundtable begins following these messages. This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks and in the Orlando area of Tough TV. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm political analyst Al Spry. So great to be here on Tough TV and across 80 stations in our beautiful state of Florida. So we appreciate you listening and supporting this show, and great things are on the horizon. So let's dive right in here. We have new revelations about NSA spying, this time internationally. Of course, you heard about Angela Merkel, the Prime Minister of Germany. Her phone was tapped. Other leaders across the globe, their phones have been tapped. But this is, of course, coming out in Edward Snowden's information that he released a few months ago.
According to the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times this past week, the German business and as many as 35 other leaders, this goes back as far as 2002. Now, Mr. Obama says he didn't know. He's been in office for 5 years.
Yeah, he knew.
Did he not know?
Of course he knew. Bush knew. This is, of course, again, another, how should we say, another bad, I should say, well, I don't want to use that term, but let's just say it wasn't good coming out of the Patriot Act. Let's say that this is another manifestation of evil. You know, this is evil.
This was the administration that was going to be so transparent and open and change everything.
What's so funny, and I love that you brought that up, Reagan, because every time an administration says they're going to be the most open and honest administration in history, I guarantee you that is a signal to you, the listener and the American people, that they're going to be the most underhanded, secretive administration in history.
There you go.
You know, every time somebody says they're going to have white gloves on, check the back of those gloves. They're black as night. You have an administration that has bullied journalists, an administration that has used the Espionage Act of 1917 more than any other presidential administration in order to bully and stifle free expression of the press in this country. And, of course, that kind of gets me a little angry.
Absolutely. I mean, free press is one of the bulwarks of the Founding Fathers, and it has been through our entire history. And anytime you start infringing on that, we're asking for trouble. And
the most interesting thing about this specific story is, you know, this is the quote: if you're a U.S. person, the NSA is not listening to your phone calls and it's not targeting your emails unless it's getting an individualized court order. Of course, that's a rubber stamp court. But do you know who's really worried about this NSA stuff? Foreigners. Because even though his words are assuaging the fears of Americans, they haven't done much to reassure foreign citizens. Many overseas perceive a double standard at work where their privacy got the short shrift from us, because we just love to know what everybody's doing. It's like Peyton Place on a global scale, Reagan.
Well, you know, and I think back across the years, and J. Edgar Hoover got accused of keeping files on everybody and this, that, and the other thing. But J. Edgar Hoover is peanuts compared to what we're looking at now.
Nixon was a saint. compared to Obama's administration.
Yeah.
Nixon, for him to get impeached for what he did, Obama should be impeached at least 3 or 4 times, and Bush should have been impeached too, and so should have Clinton. These guys are doing things on a massive scale that Nixon never even considered doing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's absolutely scary.
It is.
How do you this plausible deniability? I guess that's what they call it.
It's another word for BS.
I just don't see how you justify this or get around it, and yet the American public, I'm failing to see the outrage that you would think we would see.
Well, you know why there's no outrage? Well, everybody's distracted.
Yeah.
They're distracted by their own personal issues. We talked about that with Jesse Ventura last week. They're distracted by television. They're distracted by other things. Not Tough TV, though. You guys are informed. But, they're distracted by other things going on. And the other thing is, like I said, and I've said previously, people like to be fooled. Yeah. People like to believe that everything's copacetic. It's not something they have to worry about. They can go on and play some golf. They can bowl. They can go watch a movie and not have to. And then of course, what happens to the liberties, Reagan?
Well, there you are. We'll leave it on that note for a moment. Let us pause along the network line and remind you that this is the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith,
and I'm of course the low-keyed and very shy Al Spry,
the neutral in thought Al Spry. We will continue our conversation with Don Kirkendall as the program continues following these messages. We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And Al, as promised at this point of the program, we are joined in studio today here at the Florida Roundtable by Don Kirkendall, who is with Affordable One Insurance. He is the insurance man in Central Florida. I have known Don, or of Don, maybe, 30 years? Well, we're dating ourselves, aren't we? Has it been that long? Yeah, I think it
couldn't be that long.
I was in middle school, by the way. I'm just going to throw that in.
Well, Don, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. And before we get started, because we're going to be looking at some healthcare things, and you've got a lot to say that I think is very important. But take the first minute and tell the folks around the state, give them a little bit of your personal background.
We've been doing insurance for 7-8 years. Insurance agency. Prior to that, worked for an insurance company, which is what encouraged me to open an insurance agency as a broker. And prior to that, 20-some years in the IT business, computer business, software, hardware for very large companies, very small companies. And fascinating moving from that business into insurance, where everything in the IT business was automated. And when we first got into insurance, we actually filled out paper forms. And we still fill out paper forms, which amazes me to this day.
So the paperless office is still a dream.
It's a dream in somebody's eye, but we haven't seen it yet.
Well, now therein lies what a cross pollination, I guess I can say. You had all the years in the IT work. You're doing insurance. You know an awful lot about health insurance. And so we want to talk about this national disaster that is called Obamacare. And I don't think I'm putting it too strongly.
You said that. I'm trying to be kind here today.
Okay.
Don't be kind. It's radio. Well, come on.
Well, it is interesting that everyone that I've spoken to that I know in the IT business for the last 2 years has said, there's just no way this project happens the way they'd like it to happen. It's too massive. You typically are going to bring these things up step by step. You don't go flip a switch and say, okay, here it is. And so I think that's part of the issue.
You noticed, I just have to do an aside, what is it with all this legislation that already seems to be pre-written and then gets just pushed through and voted on without anybody reading it? I mean, I could think back to the Patriot Act, of course, one of the most heinous acts in American history. And then you go with this Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, the same thing. It's like these things are already written. They're just waiting for the moment to be brought up and then pushed through, and then they all turn out to be messes.
Well, since you said it, I'll repeat it. The Patriot Act is a perfect example of what happened with ACA, Affordable Care Act. Most people don't realize when a bill gets passed, it's not done. It gets turned over to an agency, and that agency implements that, and they make up the regulations. And so people sit there and they go, wait a minute, this regulation doesn't look like what we were told was in the bill. Well, of course it doesn't. They made 109 changes in 1 month, Health and Human Services did, to the Affordable Care Act. And it's an identical thing that we went through with the Patriot Act. Great idea, great concept. Now you have to implement it. You turn it over to these folks, and what you get out the other side looks so much different.
It's incredible. What advice do we have? I mean, Joe Citizen seems to be stuck. You know, you go to the website, the thing's frozen. Can they, after all of your years of experience, the president says, "Oh, we're going to have this all fixed by November 30th." Is that realistic?
Well, his definition of fixed and your definition of fixed may be different than my definition of fixed. What people need to understand is that they've been told, go out to the internet and make this happen. But insurance agents, we have access, we have pricing. I can tell you right now today what these various plans cost. That's not a problem. We've had that since the beginning, and as more companies come on board, because not all the companies are on board yet, we'll have even more. The holdup in the system is if you're getting a tax credit or subsidy. That's going to reduce costs for a certain group of people. That's where the registration thing becomes so important, because it's a two-step process. You register, get a number. Now you're going to utilize that to affect your pricing. And the best example is there's three of us here. You can't see us, but there's three of us here, folks. Trust me.
You can see us on Tough TV.
That's right.
There
you go. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm the young guy, and so what happens is we all three could pick an identical plan from exactly the same company and have three entirely different prices based upon our income level. Now that's extremely important to a very large group of people, and so that's something that we hope is rectified by November 30th, because they've already pushed out the dates reference to the penalties and things. And so, but we have a substantial group of people that we have not gotten covered in the past that we want to get covered under this thing. So we're hoping that gets fixed.
Well, I'm going to give you a personal story here. My wife has insurance through her job. And I have insurance through mine. Right now we're going through mine because you get cheaper rates when you put a spouse on than if you have two individual plans. Obviously, there's a break there. So I was thinking, maybe there might be an option if there's a better plan or it's cheaper with my wife. Maybe we could switch. Well, you can't do that, I found out. Some companies have what they call a spousal rule. And this spousal rule, this piece of nonsense, says that if your spouse can get insurance through another employer, they're not going to put the spouse on their insurance. So, because of the spousal rule, we're basically, and the other interesting thing about it, which we can talk about, is, and there's a little blurb there on her insurance packet that says, but we're healthcare.gov. If you go there, there's a lot of other choices. We urge you to take a look at them. Now, why don't you tell us, Don, what the secret catch is on that?
Well, the secret catch on it is that if you have an employer plan, you're not going to get a tax credit or subsidy. It's a conversation I just had with our local congressman 2 weeks ago where I said, we found another hole in the system. And he kind of looked at me, and he's a good person, but he's hearing this regularly from us where there are holes. And the hole says, if you are offered an employer plan, I'm going to give you the best example. Teachers. I got huge sympathy for teachers. And now they want to get their families covered. Well, most of the school districts now are not going to pay for that. So they have to pay for that. Teacher calls me up, $800 for husband and children. That's crazy. She can't pay that. But now her husband and children cannot get a tax credit or a subsidy. And so we also have to remind people right at this moment in time, we still have the underwritten plans. And so we could save the money that way. But then that will end 12 months from December anyway. And so, yeah, it's a glitch. It's a big hole in the system. It's similar to the hole where at the poverty level, you go up to Medicaid, then there's a hole that begins until you hit 133% of the poverty level. Those people don't get a tax credit either.
Well, that's why my friend, who doesn't make a lot, but she makes in the 20s, she has a son and a daughter, she can't qualify for any health insurance. And for her kid, there's some kind of big copay, so nobody's insured right now. Mm-hmm. and because they're in that little, what do they call it? That, like you said, that gray area or whatever, right?
Right.
So is Obamacare going to fix that, or is that still going to be the case? Will they not be able to get any insurance because they make over a certain threshold, or is this thing, or does everyone have to buy insurance but there won't be any credit, or what's the answer to that specific question?
Well, she should be able to get insurance, and she should be able to get a sizable tax credit and subsidy as soon as we can get her through the system. Now, the other thing to remember is none of these things take effect until January. So if she were, here right this moment and we got her covered, she doesn't want to get sick between now and January because she won't have anything paid for. So that's a very, very important thing to understand. And the way these work. Let's say that she does this on the 16th of January. She won't be covered till the 1st of March. The cutoff date is the 15th of every month for the 1st of the next month. Now, that's extremely important because you'd be amazed how many people come to us and they get insurance and then magically something happens. They go to a doctor just to get a checkup and he goes, you have this serious problem. And just before their insurance kicks in, now they've got a big cost, and we don't want that to happen.
Go ahead, Al.
Well, I was going to say, interestingly enough, here's a story. This will be brief, but 10 years ago, I didn't have any insurance. 11 years ago, I didn't have any insurance, and neither did my wife. We were doing the whole pray and hope that you don't get sick. Because then I found online, some insurance, which is one of those major medical policies that don't cost a great deal. And I for some reason, something told me to apply for this. And wouldn't you know it, within a few months of me applying for this, 6 months maybe, she needed some medical treatment, which would have run $25,000. And so luckily, I got in just, I don't know, something like I said, the universe works in mysterious ways.
Well, you got the good news. See, I'm at the other end of that.
Yeah.
My wife, 8 years ago, I'm brand new in insurance, and I want to get her a great insurance policy. I get one for me. I'm processing one for her, and the doctor says you need to go have your heart checked. Make a long story short, while we're in the process, they determined she has COPD. And he put it on the computer, and he put it on all her files, and she has not had health insurance since, other than the PCIP program, which was interesting in itself. But we got caught within days of her being accepted for a plan that would have
that's
covered
rough. That is very rough because pre-existing is an issue. But we mentioned this earlier before the show. This is supposed to take care of pre-existing, right? Pre-existing is not supposed to come into play anymore, which is actually a good thing.
Everything's guaranteed issue, no pre-existing conditions.
So there's one plus that I could actually say about the Affordable Care Act. So we're trying to be sort of even-handed here.
Yeah.
The only problem is, and I'll tell you this, Reagan, go ahead. And,
what I was going to suggest, I want to ask Don if he can stick around for about another 10 minutes or so here, because we've got some other things that we want to get into. And we'll take a break along our network line here and come back with a couple of more questions for you, if that's all right with you, sir.
Terrific.
So, all right. Well, let us remind folks that they are listening to the Florida Roundtable in the Orlando area. You're seeing us on Tough TV. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
Our very special guest today is Donald Kirkendall. He is the Affordable One Insurance. He's in the Winter Park area, but he's been in insurance as long as I've been in radio, I think.
That's tough. That's not possible.
I want you to know I was friends with Marconi. I was. So, but in any event, if you'll stay put, our conversation continues following these messages. From Pensacola to Key West and all points in between, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the surface of Florida's talk and entertainment networks. In the Orlando area, you're seeing us on Tough TV as well. We thank you for the pleasure of your company. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And live in studio with us this day, Don Kirkendall of the Orlando area. Affordable One Insurance. Don is the insurance man. He's been doing it a long time. Lots of good advice. We're kind of roaming around talking about this national disaster that we call the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, whatever you want. I did it again, didn't I? Well,
shame on you, Rick.
I know. Anyhow, in my own mind, I have a feeling that a lot of people are very confused about what is going on. For example, my Medicare kicks in on December the 1st. How does Obama...
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Which means that I've got to get through November healthy, right? I am flooded. I have a ton of mail in the mailbox every day. And you know what? I'm teaching at 3 universities. I'm here. I don't have time for all of this, and you have to sort through it. What advice do you have? I mean, I'm drowning in mail. People wanting to me to subscribe with them, and I guess what I do have to do it here within a certain window of time. What kind of advice do you have for folks like me who are saying help?
Well, congratulations. You're in a great place. You really are.
Thank you.
If you're on Medicare or about to go on Medicare, you're in a terrific place. And you want to make sure you get your Part A, Part B, your little red, white, and blue Medicare card, and sit down with someone who works with multiple Medicare plans, who can walk you through all of the various types of things and what's out there, and help you get the best thing for you. So you're in a great place. Okay, I'm jealous.
Okay. Well, there you go. What about for us that aren't in that great place, the Reagan is? What are the specific options that are going to be available through the Obamacare?
Okay, if you're not in a great place that he is, you have 2 options. We refer to them as ACA, Affordable Care Act, and UW, underwritten. Here's what the difference is. Underwritten is what's available right now, your typical normal health insurance plans. They'll be less expensive, but they will be underwritten, meaning that if you have health issues, you could be rated up, pay more money, ridered, things not covered, but you can still get those plans. We're doing tremendous business in those plans right now because come December, they're going to get extended out for another year. And so it's a great way to save money, especially if you are a relatively healthy person. Now, if you're not that person, personally, we sent out cards to 1,000 people that over the last few years have been turned down for a wide variety of reasons. We want to get them an ACA plan. First thing we're telling them is relax, stay off the internet, watch the movie, but don't go to the seminar. Relax. You have plenty of time. You have until December 15th. The process is relatively easy, and in terms of once we get your number for your tax credit and subsidy. And so for right now, you want to hold off until they get some of the internet things rectified. Once that you get that number, the rest of the process is relatively easy and quick. For people who want those plans but are not going to get a tax credit, you can do that right now. We'll be happy to help you with that, or your other insurance agent will help you with that. But you can do that right away. So for those folks, yeah.
I wanted to ask you, are the insurance people like yourself, are you guys excited about this Obamacare in a way because you're going to get more clients? I mean, don't you get a cut of this stuff even if they go through the ACA part?
Well, it's one of the things most people don't understand. You've seen this term navigators, which are government-subsidized people who can do certain things. Insurance agents can do that plus many, many things they can't, and we don't cost the consumer a dime. So if they worked with a navigator, it would cost them, let's pretend it cost them $200. Same for us. Now, we do get paid a commission by the insurance companies. Those have been drastically lowered.
The commissions have been lowered because there's going to be such an influx of people coming in because they have to get insurance, right?
Commissions have been lowered, and I'm not going to comment on why they've been lowered or how much they've been lowered, but they've been lowered substantially.
Okay.
But in the insurance business, we sell a wide variety of products to people, so you're balancing that out with other types.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they're lowered, your amount of people probably would cover that, even the lowered amount. I'm just throwing it out there just from a rational point of view.
The expectation in the beginning was that you would just be slammed with people on the phone coming into your office. That hasn't happened.
Is that because people are waiting to the last minute?
I believe people are going to wait to the last minute. I think there's going to be a huge crowd beginning of December once they get the internet thing fixed. And I think there's going to be another huge crowd in March because that's when the cutoff is for open enrollment. And our expectation is that really is going to be the month from middle of February to the end of March.
Well, because people wait to the last minute. That's human nature, right?
Yep,
so what is it with, I've heard there's a silver, gold, and platinum plan. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you've got catastrophic, you've got bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Platinum is the best. Absolute terrific plan. Most expensive, far and away. Catastrophic is I just want something to cover me at the lowest possible level. Mm-hmm. And within those plans, there will be variations even within the same company. So you're going to have a lot of different things to pick from. What we tell people is this. Number one, it's all about budget. Do not go out and buy something that costs $1,000 a month and you can't afford to pay that. You want to match up your budget with your coverage so that you don't have a problem month to month. Then the second thing is, let's talk about that coverage. Do a valid comparison from plan to plan about what's most important to you. Example, all these plans are going to have maternity. Now, for Reagan, that's not a big deal. He's probably not real concerned about it. For you, that may be a big deal if you're in that age group where you're considering having more children. So do you want to pay for something you're not going to utilize? There will be unlimited doctor visits or different prices on prescriptions, different formularies for prescriptions. If you've got some various illnesses, that's critical to know. You better be looking at that formulary to make sure that your drugs are covered. Otherwise, you're going to pay a lot of money out of pocket.
Also, speaking of prescriptions, very interesting that you told us. Tell us about AAA. I didn't realize this, but here's a little tip for our listeners, and our viewers on Tough TV.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. It happened to me personally. My son, who does not have insurance, who we're in the process of quickly curing that issue, but he has psoriasis, and he uses this cream, and so I get to pay for his prescription, and I drive up to my local, can I say the store?
Yeah,
no?
sure.
Okay. I drive up to the local Walmart drive-thru by the house and give him the prescription. The girl goes, it's $193. I said, I don't think so. That's not going to happen. I said, come on. I said, I have a discount card. We give out discount cards to people all the time. She comes back, it's $33. I said, you went to high school with my son. Come on, you can do better than this. This is crazy. She comes back and she says, do you have a AAA card? Well, sure. Everybody's got a AAA card. Here you go. $11.
Wow.
Saved me $180 because I had a AAA card. And my argument to her was, why don't you tell people? Why isn't there a sign in the window that says, here's the discount cards that we take to save you money on prescriptions? That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think they're not promoting it?
Because they make $180 off people who are silly enough to come in and pay for that. And unfortunately, here's the part that really tends to upset me is those are the folks that don't have $180.
No.
You know, I mean, he's been waiting. I mean, he came to me. He's had his ups and downs, jobs, this economy kind of thing. And he came to me and he goes, I haven't had this stuff in a couple, 3 months because he didn't have the money. And so, okay, fine, I'm going to do it. And we go through. But that's the group of people that I would hope would take advantage, and you need to know that. You can talk to a pharmacy. Those prices are not cast in stone.
A little negotiation is not going to hurt. I heard that. I've been down that road myself. Don, one of the things there are people probably along the network line saying, well, why don't those guys ask him this and why don't they ask him that? Best way for people to contact your office?
Well, we're on the internet at affordable1.com. And we spell that out, O-N-E. And there is a tax, if you want to get an idea, it's not the government tax credit subsidy calculator, but it'll give you a very accurate idea right in the middle of the screen to make it easy for people to try and figure out if they're going to qualify for that or not.
Okay.
And then there's a pricing thing there also where you can hit a button and you'll be able to see. The two do not work together because they can't for a variety of reasons, but you can see what the prices for the new plans are, and you can get a good idea if you're going to qualify for tax credit.
Don, thank you so much. This is Don Kirkendall, who's been involved. He's been in Central Florida a good long time. We shared some memories before we sat down to do the show today, and I guess we'll leave it at that. We shared some good memories, and both of us around here in Central Florida for a long time. Affordable1.com, and you'll find lots of answers there. You can contact him with your questions. He's very knowledgeable and on top of this affordable care business, and Boy, I'll tell you what, I choose to believe there's a lot of people out there like me, and even though he says I'm in a good position, I still felt like I needed somebody to hold my hand for a minute here to kind of guide me through this thing. So, Don Kirkendall, thank you so much for visiting with us this day. We wish you well, and we'll look forward to having you back here again sometime.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, thanks, Don.
You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks and of Tough TV in the Orlando area. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
And we'll be back with more conversation following these messages. We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks and of Tough TV. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And Al, it was nice of Don Kirkendall to stop by. He's been around Central Florida a long time, and we were kind of joking about the years slipping away on us, but years and years of experience under his belt, and I've known the name for a long time. So, affordable1.com with your questions, and he's a gentleman that I would trust implicitly with this healthcare business. So, all right, onward to other things around Florida, FLORI-DUH. We've been talking about the last several weeks this run for governor. Rick Scott has made it very obvious he would like to run for a second term. I don't think there's been an official announcement yet, but he's already putting money in the bank. He hasn't. He hasn't spent a dime.
No, and he's getting a lot of money too.
My prediction is that this is liable to be the most expensive governor's race in the history of Florida, perhaps in the entire nation. But had a chance to see some work from an old friend and acquaintance of this program of many years standing. His name is Chris Ingram. Chris Ingram, many, many years ago, was a press secretary to first Governor Bob Graham and later on U.S. Senator Bob Graham, who sat in this studio with us many, many times. Chris, I trust his political judgment. He's beyond reproach. He's got a good sense, and he's been a player in Democrat politics around this state for a long time, okay? And he has weighed in recent days on this Charlie Crist business. And interestingly enough, his latest newsletter, the headline, Crist to run for governor, or perhaps not. Now, Charlie Crist has got a website, and Chris points out it's an odd website. It doesn't say anything about the governor's race, you know. Representative Bill Young passed away here a couple of weeks ago, the longest-serving Republican in the Congress. He was from Pinellas County. There is an open congressional seat in Pinellas County. And Chris Ingram makes the case. He's got many, many good points that he believes that Charlie Crist will announce that he is going to run for Bill Young's seat in the Congress and not for governor of Florida. Number of reasons among them. He goes back into the Crist history of his 4 years as governor, and he puts pictures in his newsletter with people like Greer and Rothstein and Schorsch. The Rothstein and Greer, Charlie arm in arm, hugging them, autograph pictures. Guess where they are?
Where, Reagan?
In prison. In prison for things that they did while he was the governor.
Yes.
In his administration. And you bet your life, Rick Scott's not spent a dime. Those pictures will come out, and they'll be in the campaign material.
No, it's funny because, I don't know how much damage that'll do. It depends. Remember, Marco Rubio was all involved in that as well,
At the Democratic Convention in Orlando last week, a lot of coolness towards Crist as governor amongst the muckety-muck Democrats who were at the convention. A lot of them just don't trust him. He's been a Republican all over the place, liberal, conservative. He was an independent, and now he's a Democrat.
He's a politician.
A lot of the Democrats do not trust Charlie Crist, and he's got an awful lot of baggage.
Well, he
has a family that hates Tallahassee. That's
true.
Why he wanted to leave there after 4 years when there was an open U.S. Senate seat. Other people very close to him would rather live in Washington, D.C. than they hate Tallahassee.
Well, here's the thing, and these are very good points, but who else do the Democrats have to run? Who else has the name recognition to beat Scott?
Guess who did not deny it, who said he had no plans but wouldn't say no at the Democratic Convention last weekend?
Who?
A United States Senator by the name of Bill Nelson.
Really?
Was pressed on would you run for governor, and he wouldn't say no.
And he just won another 6 years in the Senate.
Well, there is precedent. You go back to the late Lawton Childs. Lawton Childs resigned a safe U.S. Senate seat. He was in his third term or something like that, to come back and run for governor of Florida so that the Democrats could hold on to the governor's office at that time. He left the Senate. Matter of fact, he came back and ran against Bob Martinez in order to get the Republicans out of the governor's office. And so don't put it past the Democratic Party to turn up the pressure on Bill Nelson. And if Bill Nelson is the Democratic governor, then he would get to appoint a Democrat to replace him in the United States Senate.
Very true. But now here's another wrinkle. Beverly Young is thinking about running for that seat.
Yeah.
So that would mean, if this plays out the way it could possibly, based on the information that you've been provided, you could have Beverly Young running for the seat against Charlie Crist. And of course, normally when the widow of a congressman who dies is very loved runs, they usually have no problem winning.
Yeah.
So you could see, if this thing really plays out the way that this could play out, we could see Charlie still out of politics at the end of it. If he has to make a very important choice now. Should he run again for that office, for governor, or should he try to go again for the Washington, D.C. seat? Because, like you said, some family members want to live in D.C. versus Tallahassee.
Yeah. And another reason on the website that we might want to talk about, the state has a new campaign contribution law. And once we get by November 1st, the contribution limit jumps from $500 per person to $3,000 per person. Aha! That's probably why a whole bunch of them holding off making announcements until we get into November.
That's very good. That's a very good point. So we are going to find out Mr. Charlie's idea of if he's going to run again by the next show. We will tell you, because I have information here that he will be announcing on November 4th his intentions whether to seek this seat. And, of course, since that falls a little early next week, should have an answer for you, hopefully on the next show.
I love Chris Ingram's appellation here, former Governor Charlie Toutan Crist. So,
there's no love lost there, is there, Reagan?
Chris Ingram. Well, this is a Democrat saying these things about him, so we shall see. All right. Well, this is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
We'll be back with a closing thought following these messages. This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And we presume you know who you are. And again, we say thank you for all of your time. A couple of minutes here before we go, Al, and I know you got something on your mind you want to get out there.
Well, our politicians, our local congressmen, we've had Grayson on and we've had Webster. Grayson has done some things that I like. I like his vote to get rid of the NSA spying stuff. Some of his ideas are interesting to me, even though he's a Democrat, because I'm an open-minded guy like that.
Yeah.
However, when you use hyperbole in order to play the lowest common denominator of your party faithful, this bothers me. Grayson's equating of the Tea Party to the KKK was beyond the pale to me. Mm-hmm. Now, I will admit that any party gets its extremists in. Okay, you have extremists of either sort, either on the left or the right. But to equate, to lump everybody in, I know many members of the Tea Party that are very nice people, that are patriotic people. So to lump them all in as KKK members was ridiculous.
Well, let me just say this, and we have criticized Congressman Webster for a couple of things, but I would criticize Congressman Grayson for this. Supposedly we were getting the Grayson 2.0, the kinder, gentler, and apparently that now has gone out the window. But, he says if the hood fits, wear it. doesn't he realize that he is contributing to that same texture and tenor and quality of Congress that he loves to complain about?
Of course.
He is helping to make it worse.
The ultimate hypocrisy, and all it is a pandering to people that aren't that bright, who like to, have people painted in the worst possible way so they could get angry at them. It's nonsense.
We don't know whether it's because he now thinks he's in a safe Democratic district or he just doesn't give a damn or whatever. But, I would go along with the Orlando Sentinel that qualifies him to be the chump of the week. Well, all right. Time for us to run away. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you next week with another edition of the Florida Roundtable.
You've been listening to Florida Roundtable, a weekly look at issues and problems of concern to Floridians from a state, national, and international perspective. Presented by the Florida News Network with your hosts, Reagan Smith and Al Spry. The views and opinions expressed during the preceding program are solely those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station's ownership, management, or sponsors of FNN. Your views and opinions are welcome. Address your card or letter to Florida Roundtable in care of Reagan Smith, 2500 Maitland Center Parkway, Suite 407, Maitland, Florida, 32751. Or you may email reagansmith@fnnonline.com. Thank you for listening, and please join us again next week for another edition of Florida Roundtable.